All right. Welcome all to the 22 February 2022 Annapolis Transportation Board meeting. Delayed by one day because of a holiday. And I'm glad to see that some of us can make it. I hope others will join us, but I did get notice from a couple of people that they were going to be away and could not join us. I would, before we go into the rest of the formal meeting, I would like to take advantage of the presence of Mayor Gavin Buckley right off the bat, because you are a busy person indeed when you're not dodging gunfire. And we would love to hear from you about 100% electric transport and other things.
You want me to start now, or?
Yes, start now. You can take off right off the bat.
And I know Hillary couldn't be with us. She's away this week. We had some slides, so I don't know if Will has those slides. Do you have those, Will?
I do not have them right here. Let me see if I can pull them up.
Let me do a couple of business, while you're doing all that stuff, I'll do a couple of business items, which I was deferring. But Tara Ashmore is our secretary, and she appears not to be here, which is not good. But I will use the screen to record attendance here. And then let me take a motion for the approval of the agenda. All right, moved by Tom Schock, seconded by John Purnell. And all in favor of approving the agenda distributed prior? We have a majority. It is carried. We are in the agenda now, formally adopted. And Mayor Buckley, you are welcome to begin at any moment. Do you have the slides and things that you?
I can move forward, and if Will can find them, no problems. He's just doing this, just getting back in action. Will, we're so happy to have you back here. He's obviously been an important part of our team, and we're just happy to see him back and looking healthy and making jokes.
Looks like he's sitting at home tonight.
First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you guys for the work that you did on your report on public transport, and I'm a big supporter of trying to find a way to make it free. I truly believe to popularize transportation, you have to make it accessible. I think you also have to make it part of the experience. So what we have in front of us now is an opportunity with the rebuilding of the Hillman Garage. The city of Annapolis, as you know, has a lot of parking, but we have conditioned people in Annapolis to park on the waterfront. We have the, parking spaces with the best view, maybe one of the best views in the country, and that has always frustrated me. So, we are using this opportunity to leverage the value of the Hillman Garage to not only build a new state-of-the-art garage, but also a world-class park at City Dock instead of a world-class parking lot. And then we want to use this opportunity to condition people to use free, fast, and carbon neutral transportation to get around the city. So the goal of this effort is to get people to not do that last quarter mile when they come into the city. Get them out of their cars as quick as possible, whether that's a portion of our 2 million tourists or whether that's a portion of our 500 or so employees. When we relocate people from the garage, the things that we put in place, when that happens, should outlast the rebuilding of the garage, and we should continue to move around the city with this kind of new transportation, and we should lead the country in our initiatives. So this initiative is a small one. It's a pilot. It is called the 100% Electric Plan, and it has quite a few different pieces to it. The first one that you'll all be the most familiar with is to take the circulator and make it efficient, make it 100% electric. So you've probably seen some images of the shorter buses in Quebec and some of the Canadian cities that they use to move around. We think we can do that for the circulator. We also believe that a lot of the hold up for electrifying public transport has been infrastructure. Well, we know that the circulator runs shorter routes, and we know that the type of bus that we're speccing would mean that a bus could run a whole day and then go back to the station for charging. So it would have the range to do the shorter routes. We know that we're not quite there when it comes to interjurisdictional public transportation. So we have some work to do on that with our partners at the county. But we have an opportunity to make the transportation that the city runs that is just inside the city boundaries to be electric. So we'll start with the circulator. I'm trying to extend the circulator route. I haven't really talked a lot about this yet, but I'm trying to extend the circulator route to the stadium and then on to the Growls supermarket so that we can actually get people to a supermarket from downtown.
Everybody loves the circulator, and there are people in all over Ward 2 and Ward 3 that would like to be able to hop on as well.
So that
But
will touch on those areas. It will obviously go through 3 different public housing areas that will, provide equity for some of those folks that are not as lucky as the rest of us. But it'll be fun and it'll be part of the experience, and it'll be a good thing to do for the planet. Not get your car out, not get on in a taxi or whatever, an Uber or something like that, but get on a 100% electric circulator. The other thing we're planning on doing is using Calvert Street as a transportation hub for a second form of electric transportation, and they would be called the 10-minute trolleys. On Calvert Street, we have 3 huge parking assets. The State Garage is next to St. John's. It is free all weekend long. It is free 7 nights a week. The County Garage, which is empty 7 nights a week pretty much, and all weekend long. And then the Gotts Garage, which is way under capacity. So we have a lot of parking, but it's at the top of Main Street. It's not at the bottom of Main Street. So that 10-minute trolley would do a small loop every 10 minutes at certain times. It would use secondary roads, and those secondary roads would mean it would stay off the busier arteries, and then therefore not get caught up in the traffic that we see sometimes on a busy weekend in the city. So would go around State Circle and through some of the smaller streets, maybe cut through a back alley and hit back up onto Main Street, and then come back to its base on Calvert Street, where we intend on putting charging stations and using.
So, Mr. Mayor, if you're ready, I'm ready to share if you want. If someone can make it possible for me to share the screen, I can put up the slides for you.
Okay, great. Can we make that possible?
I pushed the share button, but it's not allowing me to share it. Can you see anything that I have on there?
I'm going to leave this to you guys. I've got the techie skills of a 95-year-old.
Can you all see the screen?
Josh, are you there? Can you step in and help us? No, we can't see the screen.
Not see your screen, sir. You click the share screen down in the bottom center.
Yes.
It should be popping up.
It's saying share, but then the button won't allow me to actually push share. So when I push share, it says desktop or application.
Well, it just shared just now.
Yeah, that was me. I did that as a test. It works for me.
Yeah, that was correct. Let me try. Yeah, it's saying, it's asking me to share my entire screen. And it says Zoom wants to share the contents of your screen, but it's not allowing me to push the share button that's on the right. Did you have to push the share button, Kirk?
Yes.
In another screen?
Yeah, and it worked.
another
Everything seemed to work fine.
Okay, it's not
Uh,
share, maybe.
The images are available on the website. Our marketing team that we put together for the rebuild of the Hillman Garage and the City Dock plan did a TED Talk-like presentation. I encourage everyone to see it. I think it's a little bit over 20 minutes, but it's an exciting way to talk about a new way to think about transportation, the new garage, and what it's going to be, the positive outcomes that's going to provide environmentally, and also the City Dock plan. So if you get a chance, just jump onto that. And
Gavin, we had a presentation by Eileen Fogarty. Is this another presentation or something?
Yeah, it's a little different. It's more the marketing plan, because I think we need to make sure that the transportation is very distinguishable, that it is branded, and that the parking signage is effective, and that it's really identifiable with what we're trying to do while the Hillman Garage is being reconstructed.
Okay, well, we'll be happy to look at that. And there's a link somewhere on the website, the city website?
Yep.
Okay.
We did a presentation at Maryland Hall, so.
All right, thanks.
Will can send that all to you as well to share. There may be a link to that. So those are the two on land based ideas. That, along with us starting out with some smart technologies, some on demand type services as well. We're going to experiment with that with the team. We're going to enact some park mobile situations in other areas, and multiple things. And then the big one that no one thinks is possible, that it can't even be ever achieved in Annapolis, is the idea of actually trying to use some of our water for public transport. I'm from a country where people who live in Sydney go to work on a ferry every day. I've lived in Seattle, and we know that they mobilize their waterfront, and that.
We have slides now.
Okay, and that ferry is a big part of Seattle's identity, and that water is a big part of Seattle's identity. It's always floored me that we're surrounded by water, but no one ever had the vision to really utilize it. So I'm not talking about a large ferry. I'm just talking about the idea of testing a little ferry that you can roll on and roll off. It's really more of a center console boat, but it has an open bow and an open transom. And you can fit about 8 bikes on it, 4 on the roof and 4 in the back with people, and then about 4 or 6 people on the bow. And that ferry would just run one route. And I know that there's been some debate on whether this is going to be, a challenge to Watermark. I don't see it that way. I think, some people can't afford to get on the water taxi. Some people want to go to other destinations. We are going to just trial a ferry, a 100% electric ferry, and we're also going to build what I will believe will be the first 100% electric ferry charging station in the country, and that will come with an improvement that we do to 5th Street when we make that also a transportation hub. I also see some of the 10-minute trolleys stationed and leaving from 5th Street and going out to the shopping center and the multiple parking assets that are on that route. Eastport has quite a lot of parking. We are going to be working on a thing called 5 o'clock lots. Lots that are empty after 5 o'clock because the officers go home, such as the post office. That is a good example of one. There are other commercial lots that we think we could activate all around the Eastport area and actually add a lot more parking capacity than they have. Eastport hasn't been motivated to come up with a parking plan, I think because they haven't had to. We've always let people park in the neighborhood, but I think the time for that is now. And I think that we have done a lot for the businesses in Eastport. We've done a lot for the maritime industry, and now we need to provide some protection for the residents of Eastport. And we also need to provide some transportation. The same principle could apply in Eastport. We could head people off before they get to the peninsula. We could head people off at the shopping center or just beyond the shopping center and get them into the 10-minute trolley and then get them to the 4th Street shopping precinct. Or we could get them to a bike on 5th Street and they could ride over to the Maritime Museum, or they could get off the 10-minute trolley and they could get onto a 100% electric ferry and get on the water. For some people, this is going to be an opportunity. And here's another equity issue that I want to make the case for. For many kids, they've never, ever been on the water in their lives, right? This means that they can get on the water. We have plans to work with the Annapolis Seamanship Academy that operates out of the city marina. So they are right there. That will help offset some costs. We hope to roll this into a transportation plan and make it part of our transport. And then all it will do is just go from 5th Street to Prince George Street. So from Eastport, the 5th Street ferry will travel to a pier or to whatever we rebuild at Prince George Street, and then be in the historic district. The one we have spec'd is a Swedish-made boat that will be partially assembled in America in the same yard that we assemble Beneteau boats. They're a French-made boat that are used for commercial purposes in America. But in the short term, I think not only we could use Watermark as the operator of the ferry, partial operator of that, and we could test out the outboard technology on that. The reason we're proposing the Swedish boat is because they're so much more advanced on their technology than we are. I haven't seen an equivalent boat in the country. If I have to not call it a ferry and call it something else, so that we can get it rated to just move people across, it's going to have a rating for how many people are allowed to be on it. We're not going to charge people. So we'll have a meeting with Beth Bayless soon to work out a lot of those details. But this would be an exciting opportunity to just see what it is like to activate a piece of water in the city of Annapolis, and then connect that ferry or that boat to other electric plans. I truly believe, and I've reached out to County Executive Pittman for about $250,000 in his budget to share in this pilot with us. I've reached out to Senator Alfrith for about $250,000. I'm making the same ask of BG&E, who we think will be a great partner in this electric plan. And then I was with Senator Cardin's chief of staff today and said, this is a great candidate for some of the federal dollars that are going to be coming down to us through the Build Back Better. I promised the councillors that I would find a way to finance it that wouldn't really fall on too much or share the costs, so it wouldn't fall on the lap of the taxpayer. I'm always mindful of that. Whenever I come up with a plan, I always try to come up with an alternate funding source. And this is a trial. Now, I believe this boat is a great candidate for the Harbour Master. It has got an open transom. It would be a great way to put down moorings. Now, for people that say it's not going to be safe because the transom's open, I'm sure many of you have traveled on car ferries and you stood at the back of the car ferry with 50 other people, and there's a mesh guardrail there that keeps you protected and stops you falling in behind a much larger boat than this. And what's beautiful about this boat is not only could it be the new Harbour Master boat, and we will trial it and see if it's compatible, but it doesn't burn any fossil fuel. Now, the Super Bowl, every second ad was about an electric car. We know that that is the future, and it has to be a consideration for the future of boating. I want Annapolis to be a leader in the country. We have the opportunity right now, and I truly would appreciate the support of the Transportation Board. Thank you for letting me talk so much.
Great. I'm sure we have some questions, and I'll start out with some, if I may. First of all, I'm really happy to hear about the possibility of sharing resources among the governments for funding some elements of this, and then Eastport parking, the idea of sharing a lot of the parking which is idle. We have a great parking resource that most of us recognize is underutilized because it is often just closed off to use because it's privately held, because the hours are, the parking is reserved for certain hours and not available to everybody. But if you can find ways of making all of these private and public resources in some sense open to all, public in some sense, that would be a great contribution to the parking problem. Now, with respect to finances, I had the pleasure of sitting in on the Finance Committee discussion of this, and the number that sticks in my mind is $1.4 million, which is the ask from the city budget to kick this off. Can you explain to me what that will cover? Will it cover the entire trolley system plus the electric boat, or a portion of it? I gather it does not include any operating expenses, but just the design study plus initial capital costs. Am I right on that?
Yeah, so capital costs, some infrastructure, some research on different things. But I want to point out that we have money in the budget for the garage to operate for a mobility plan for the year, the 14 months that the garage is under construction. So the
$1.4 million is outside the garage project?
Yeah, the $1.4 million is outside the garage budget. And the reason it is in the budget, even though I have promised that I will find the funds, alternative funds, and I will share the costs with our state and county partners and a sponsor as well. I believe we got a good shot at that. Is that we have to put it in the budget. We have to identify that. Now, a lot of this stuff wasn't done before we got here. I just want to say, we account for every single dollar. We do things the exact way we're supposed to do. Teresa Sutherland put this city on good footing. David Gerald has put this in the capital budget, so for everyone to debate. But we have operations costs there. We know that when we move it into a public transportation piece, we get most of that funded through state, federal numbers and all that sort of stuff. I think this is going to help popularize our transportation. And then I think, when we start to electrify our county buses as well, it really is going to be the shift that we need in this country. We need people to not look down on public transport. And that's what we've, you guys know that way more than I do. Mm-hmm. So operation costs for the first year or so through a shared partnership with the Seamanship Academy, through the funding that we get. And then in the second year, we would work on different sources for that. So I think, the shortfall, that 20% shortfall that we need, you identified it for the buses. We think that number is not huge, and that is achievable. And a little bit more to that would be.
Yeah, we think it's less than that. We think it's under 10%.
Great.
I wonder if other members of the board have questions and points they'd like to raise.
Yes, Kurt, if I could have the floor.
Yes.
So, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the presentation. A couple of points I'd like to make. Number one, I watched the recording from the Maritime Advisory Board where you made a similar presentation, and I listened to some of the concerns. Yes, you're correct that just about everywhere you look overseas, there are companies and nations that are further advanced than we are with marine electric propulsion. And some of the members of the board in their comments expressed concerns about that there isn't anybody in Annapolis that has experience with this stuff that can help support the operation. I want to reassure you that there is, namely my wife and I. For 12 years, we've run a business here doing exactly what you're describing, and but not so much in the commercial space, more in the mostly in the recreational space, because that's where we had the products. But in recent years, we have developed relationships with manufacturers, again, overseas, who do make products that are suited for commercial applications. So the point being, whatever support, wherever this goes, there is a resource, namely us, who can help make it happen, help support it, and help solve problems when they come up. It is true that with fewer moving parts and a much simpler overall architecture, that electric propulsion is less maintenance intensive. But as you have seen with electric cars, there are maintenance issues. There are things that happen, but that shouldn't stop you from going forward, because most of the people on that board don't know us, because and so they wouldn't know that the resource we offer is there. And just to give you some rough numbers, we are now close to having sold 200 electric outboards of various sizes. So that's nearly 200 stinking, noisy gas outboards that are not high quality engines. They're not EPA Tier 4 like you would have in a new bus that you buy. That were not sold, that are not on the operating on the nation's waterways as a result. And just to give you an idea of how the ball is rolling, I mean, you're on the right track, I believe. Our business volume has tripled in 3 years. We knew electric was a good idea based on problems we had with diesels in boats we've owned over the years. We started looking at electric options in the early 2000s. So we knew this day would come, but we didn't think it would be so sudden. And we're actually struggling now to keep up with inquiries, and we now have a whole new set of problems in terms of how we grow our business and where do we find the talent and how do we grow the talent, et cetera. And then I'm not going to touch with the 30-foot pole questions about whether Watermark should operate the ferry or not. But I want to reassure you that we are working with Watermark on options for them. And they're right off the bat, there is one important thing you can do that would help not only Annapolis, but other localities where companies like Watermark want to switch to electric. As you probably know, Watermark's vessels must be Coast Guard inspected, and the Coast Guard issues a certificate that gives them, legal permission to take on fare-paying passengers. And the Coast Guard has a nationwide network of inspectors who go out. So whether you're trying to do a border taxi in Savannah, Toledo, San Diego, San Antonio, wherever, not far away, there is a Coast Guard inspector who will come out and inspect your vessel. If that inspector has a concern, or if he's seeing technology that he's never seen before, there is within the Coast Guard an organization called the National Design Center, and he can request support, engineering or technical support from that group. And they can help him decide whether to grant the inspection or to put caveat or limitations on it, or reject it outright. That National Design Center has been a big obstacle to electrification of commercial vessels. The Coast Guard apparently does not have anybody in that group that has any knowledge of electric. So there have been cases, one that we heard about in San Antonio, where that office tied up an electrification project for 2 years. And nothing that the operator put on the table would satisfy them in terms of, they proposed very expensive fire protection technology, and it's ridiculous that this took 2 years. What you can do tomorrow is call our congressional delegation, the senators and congressmen, and ask them to hold a hearing and drag the Coast Guard in front of the hearing panel of the committee members and ask them, why is it that a applicant for Coast Guard inspection of an electric vessel has to wait 2 years? And put pressure on them. It should not take any longer with today's technology for a commercial vessel operator to get through the inspection process, whether they have a diesel engine, a gasoline engine, or an electric propulsion system. This is a big obstacle, and I think some pressure from our congressional delegation will wake them up, and that they will get the right people involved. Now, I can't say much about it, but we do have some indications that the Coast Guard is also thinking and exploring some electrification ideas. So, but that's a different part of the Coast Guard. This group, in wherever they're based, I think they're based somewhere in the DC area, not far from us, has been an obstacle. And to put it in simple terms, they need their butt kicked by Congress to get with the program. So with that, I've had the floor for probably longer than I deserve, and I'll shut up now. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
David, that's really that's really exciting news to hear you've been on the forefront of that. I'll be calling you tomorrow so we can game out some of this stuff. But it's great to have that, and we are also trying to lure the company to set up a factory here in Anne Arundel County. That's our
anything we can do to help with that.
Yeah, our goal would be to, David Taylor would be a great idea, but the statement that makes that you're building 100% electric boats in the city, or 100% electric engines, or whatever that is, it says a lot about who you are and what your priorities are. And right. So I'm looking forward to calling you tomorrow, David.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board?
Yeah, Kurt, can I take the floor? Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for that great presentation. The slides were well worth the waiting. And I wanted to ask, I think as we add more layers to this transportation system, the 10-minute trolley, the ferry, the electric ferry, do we have a game plan for a mobile app that will help both visitors and regular riders identify when the next one's coming, know what the right combination of routes to take to get to their destination, know where to stand and wait for things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a mobile app plan?
There is 100%. There is a mobile app plan in the budget for the for the garage. So it will interface with the transportation things that we're proposing, but it'll also give an on-demand option. So they have plans for certain pickup points for on-demand. Now, I witnessed firsthand some resistance to technology, even with our Park mobile app. People would use it in DC, but they just couldn't get their heads around using it in Annapolis. Maybe that's changed, but you know, it just is so much smarter and easier to do that, to embrace the technology than to just be scared of it. And I know, so I hope, you know, this is going to be the start of everybody embracing these things that can make it a lot easier for us when you're familiar with it.
Can the transportation board be of help to you in making sure this app is really functional across all routes and platforms? And
I don't think it is part of the broader transportation plan at this point. It's just more of an internal one. The on-demand piece, you know, that is that's only been promised to us while the garage is under construction. So, you know, I think it's a great chance for us to experiment with it and pilot it. And then, you know, we all know that seems to be the direction everybody's heading in for these very limited these runs where there is nobody on a bus or there's one person on a bus, and how can we get some economies through the technology.
Beth, did you have something?
Yes, back to the app that we're talking about. There is a transportation app. It's a general app that is used all over the country, maybe even all over the world, for all I know. It's out of Canada, so it could be. And the state uses it. They have a big sign on the back of their buses about using it. And I know we use it. It works on GPS. So as soon as you pull it up on your phone, it automatically becomes Annapolis. So it isn't on demand, but it is a very good app. And you can ask John, since I told John about it, he's gone crazy over this app. So, and it was Tara Ashmore, who isn't with us, that told me about it because she rides a bus to Washington and she uses it. And anyway, I was wondering if there's a way to work with that company and see if we can't put our circulator is on there, by the way. Our circulator is on that app, but make sure that all the other things that we have are added on that app. And that would be certainly a good starting point for all these new things that we're looking at and everything. So I don't know if you knew about this app, but it's really a great app. When you go out, do you know about the app?
No, I use the app, and it's very inefficient that the parking company uses for the circulator. But it was good for a while. It hasn't been good. So give me the name, and I'm going to download it now.
It's Transit, and when it's Transit, and when you go out, it's got the sideward S, and it's green, and when you pull it up, and yes, because it's not on demand and it doesn't use real time, so the buses could be a little later.
Is it that one? Sorry.
I can't see it that big.
Sorry.
Yes, I understand. I just can't see it that well.
I didn't see it.
No.
I don't know if you can see it on there. I got to get my thing in. No, you really can't see it on the phone. We'll send you the link for it. How about that?
Yeah. It's here. Okay. Can you see it down in my corner, right down
There
here?
it is.
Yep,
See the upside down S?
I'm downloading it now.
Yes. Yeah, and the only thing is, because it's not real time, which we don't have on our buses, but according to John and Tara, our buses are really pretty close. So unless there was an accident or something crazy, our buses aren't too far behind their schedule anyway. So you get a pretty good idea of when your bus is going to arrive, and it's a free app and it's great. And it just seems like something that should be advertised by the city. I know that they have it on at the transportation department, I think has it information on it out on their website, but I went out to
Yeah.
next door and announced it to everybody, but that only is good for
Yeah.
so long, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But
Well, we'll send it to Gavin so he has it.
Yeah.
I have one other point I would like to raise. Gavin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling for the moment, we're treating the Hillman garage and your 100% electric portion of the transit program somewhat in isolation from the overall transit system of Annapolis. And I don't know if that's true or not. You can correct it, but if we need to do a better job of integrating the two as time passes, naturally we would strongly suggest that that be done. The recommendations that we made a couple of weeks ago regarding fare-free transit definitely apply to the total transit system that Annapolis operates. It will be of benefit to a large number of riders. We expect a 25 to 50% increase in ridership. And one of the things I think we would all be interested in seeing is what you expect the ridership to be, if all goes well, with the program that you are describing, both the ferry and the land-based systems.
I mean, we can take a stab at that. We know how many people we're putting in the Park Place garage, so we know how many of those employees are going to have to make their way down to their offices and then into City Hall. And so, and then we would be guesstimating what it is. I think, the ferry piece will be, even though it's next to a parking asset that we've made some arrangements with, and even though, but I still think that won't be particularly a commuter solution. I think it'll be more weekends and novelty. I actually think it'll be great for the summer where the Eastport Elementary School can utilize their fields for parking and get some people to park there. Now it's only 12 people, 10 people. It's not like, it's interesting to hear the criticism because one, it's going to be too many people. And then the next thing, it's like, why aren't you giving people water access? And, there, like I said, there's every reason why we can't try it. If I get it covered through grants, they should give me a chance to try it, and I will get it covered through grants. And I think, we're going to prove the naysayers wrong, because I think it really is an impressive vessel. I've had the Harbour Master out on it. I've had Chris Trombow out on it, Senator Elfreth out on it. I've had the seamanship team out on it. It is, like you said, a well-performing vehicle with very few moving parts. And that is one of the selling points on electric cars, that they're low maintenance, low operational costs. And we should be doing that on the water.
Kurt, you're muted.
Thank you so much. I'm excited by the possibilities that you have raised, Gavin. Of course, we have ambitions that we would like the city to adopt as well. And we hope that the stars align and we can do all of these things.
I'm very supportive of that, of the work you've done. So I want to thank you for that.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We will commence the balance of the agenda then.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Appreciate you guys.
Goodbye.
Thank
Say
you.
anything to Tom. How you doing, Tom?
All right. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes previously distributed. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes as distributed, prepared by Dave DeQuincio. And thank you for that, Dave.
Motion to accept.
All right, second.
Seconded.
All in
Seconded.
favor? All right. The next item on the agenda is new business legislation. One of the items bears immediately on Gavin's presentation to us. That's 04021. Oh, no, I skipped over something. Reports from committee members. Let's go back to number 7. Elvia and Tom were to speak about the issue that Lanny Hartman raised. Tom, are you prepared to talk to us about that?
Sure. So Elvie and I just connected to share our thoughts with one another regarding the signage for electric vehicle parking spaces. And we, to condense that conversation, it was really twofold. We felt like there needed to be explicit signage that indicated the space was only for electric vehicles under all circumstances, and that it wasn't like a flex space or, for electric vehicles, if it's, on a Tuesday or whatever. We felt like that part was important, but then also to ensure that electric vehicles owners understood that the parking space was only available to actively charge, and it wasn't a space you could park in just because you had an electric vehicle.
Right.
And the thinking being similar to any kind of downtown parking space, to turn those spaces over quickly, so that it doesn't seem like there's never an available resource. So to that end, we captured an example signage from the BWI Amtrak train station, which accomplished that objective, and forwarded that on in the notes that we sent to you, Kurt. So
Yeah, that looked very nice.
yeah. So anyway,
Are you suggesting, do we need to do anything? Do we need to make a recommendation of the city that is responsive to your conclusion?
So we didn't talk about, I think our discussion was, hey, we need to kind of, gather our thoughts and kind of condense that into a recommendation for the board. I don't know. I honestly don't know what our options are. I mean, if the city is looking for someone to provide them with guidance on signage, sure. I got the sense from reading the one gentleman's, fairly comprehensive feedback that there were some out of compliance components of the city's current signage. And I'm not deep enough on that topic to really say, okay, well, the city needs to drop their current signage and adopt this signage. I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. Would you like to get together with Elvia and make a recommendation regarding an action that we should take?
Sure. I think, I think that letter, she kind of wrote up the email and then we kind of passed it back and forth and modified it. I think, let me see what she put in there, just because it's not, I think her email, that email that we sent to you that included the picture had, a statement for the city.
Let's see, I don't have it in front of me.
It's fine. So it just says, we hope the board will quickly agree with the investment. So I guess her takeaway was that we needed to provide a recommendation to the city as far as what should be included in the Hillman garage. So it was specific to Hillman itself. So like, who's the right person for that to go to? The board just kind of formulates something and then we can review it, and if everybody's good with it, it gets sent on to.
Yeah, it's addressed to the mayor and city council, and they figure out how to implement it. So if you would like to, I gather you're not prepared at the moment, but if you could prepare a language for us to to vote on and forward as a recommendation, that would be great.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we're gonna run into, like I said, the gentleman who put all those feedback together, apparently like green paint can't be used, our opinion differed from that.
Right.
So if we make a recommendation that's essentially, known to be in conflict with some standing statute, I guess, again, I'm not deep enough on that to know how does that get sorted out. Do you just want us to put together what we'd like to happen and let the
Yeah.
chips fall where they may?
I think so, unless other
Okay.
members of the board have a different opinion. I think you two know more about this than the rest of us.
Well, I mean, I have an electric car, but that's kind of like owning a dog and then, being a veterinarian, you know what I mean?
Well,
I
you're ahead of
really-
me.
Okay, well, that, maybe measured in millimeters. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, how deep on this do we need to go? I mean, do you want us to kind of dig into the regulations and validate what that one gentleman put out there? Because I mean, he wrote it up. I mean, it could be right. I honestly don't know. Or do we just say, hey, this is what we think makes sense, and if it's not in compliance, well, somebody in the city government will sort that out.
Yeah, I would lean toward the latter.
Okay. Okay, then I think that's pretty achievable. I'll hook up with Alvia. Yeah, we'll get some language together and we can like kind of vote on it when we have a bigger crew next month.
Great. Beth, I have to step away for a few minutes. Could you take over at this
Again?
point? Yes.
Again? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom,
Yeah.
okay, based on what you were just saying, my only concern about leaving it for the city to work out is that when will it, it just might not ever happen. So the more information that you can provide, even as background information, such as, such and such a regulation may not be in, this may not be in compliance with such and such and such. But this is what we feel is the best interest of the public and to be able to make this happen or whatever. But I really think you should have as much information and not leave it to the city to say, oh, wow, this is good, this is bad, this isn't, I got to investigate it, because it just doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen anytime soon. So that's my suggestion. I don't know how Kurt feels about it, and he didn't hear the whole thing I said. So
I'm sure it
I
was
said,
perfect.
yeah, I know. I said that based on how things work with anybody, that if we just say this is what we think should happen, and let the city figure out if it's within regulations, I wouldn't do that. I would do at least some investigation to know that this is what would fly. And because you don't want them to say, oh, I got to work on this. It goes in that pile, and that's the pile that never gets looked at. So you have to give them as much information as you can, even if it's just background information, but just, this is still what we want, but here's some background information, kind of thing. That's just a
Okay.
suggestion. I'm not the one
Sounds
doing
fine.
it. So
will you take this, harmonize it in ways that make sense, and come back?
Sure, we'll put together some language of what we think, would be the best recommendation to
Terrific.
the city, and we can vote on that next week.
That's great. I'm going to knock off the next two quickly. A fare-free transit status, and Beth and John can chime in as necessary. We made a number of presentations on this subject. I think they were all well received to the City Council working session, to the Transportation Committee of the City Council. And so the city has our recommendations and our analysis. Kwaku made some comments on it, and we made some comments on his comments.
yes.
So I
Kwaku.
think it's kind of in the ballpark of the city. I was delighted to hear that At least in principle, Gavin is supportive of the idea, and I hope to hold him to that. John and Beth, do you have anything further on that?
My only comment is, how do we get now the transportation committee? They said they had to look into it and think about it and do some, work on it and whatever. And how do we find out if they are doing anything at this point, or what, where is it on their agenda to move along? And this is what
that's exactly the right question. And
because this
and
is
at some point we need on the city council, we need at least one champion and preferably more champions to carry
we
this
do.
forward.
I mean, I think we do have them. I think that
And one thing
Sheila-
that you should be aware of that is that we do have a champion on the county council, and Lisa Rodvian is going to try very hard to make this happen at the county level with their transit system. I think that would help the city a great deal, because we would be surrounded by a good model.
Well, so my question, so I go back to my question, which is what I was saying to Tom about giving as much background as you can so that you don't get hung up with the city council or with city government doing something that just doesn't happen. Are you going to contact, let's see, who's the head of transportation?
I will work with Karma. I
yeah,
suggest that
Karma.
each of you work with the city council alderperson that you are connected to. And if we all
Well,
work
I'm with
together, we can
Karma.
make it
In
happen.
fact, all three of us are with Karma. John, you and I, we're all with Karma.
No, well,
Yeah.
yeah,
She's Ward 1. I mean,
no,
no.
she's
I'm
Ward 2.
sorry.
She's
Yeah,
Ward 2.
Yeah.
she's Ward 2, but Ward 1 doesn't have a representative on there.
As a representative of the council.
Well, yeah,
it's LA.
but not on the transportation committee.
No, but I'm saying we should work with our alderpersons. We have
Oh.
worked with the committee now.
Okay,
It's
well,
now time to work with
we
the
know-
council at
we know,
large.
okay, we know Ellie is behind it, so.
Yeah. Okay, and next item is
Can
bicycles.
I add one thing in there,
Sure.
Kurt? I have a notion, and I guarantee you it's a little more than a notion, of a way to do some funding for fare free.
Mhm.
The way to at least close that gap. I think we should approach the county. Quack, are you sitting down? I hope. I can't see you, so I'm hoping you're sitting down. I think we should approach the county to pay for the jurors that are moved every morning by the circulator.
Oh, and we've all thought that, I think.
Well, I can put a little numbers to it. I did some rough calculations, and I have to go back to SP Plus and RLS to get the exact numbers, but I'll bet you they're moving 10,000 people twice a day all year during the year. They'll do roughly 20,000 trips. It's almost exactly the same length as the state shuttle. Their Naval Academy to state office buildings. This is Park Place to the courthouse. It's almost identical trip. And the state pays us $250,000 to do 100,000 rides. So I would argue that 1/5 or $50,000 is the appropriate payment that Anne Arundel court system should subsidize the circulator for all the work they do in the morning.
That's a very interesting suggestion.
That's half the distance to the goal line.
Yeah, that would help a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, now how do we get the city to work with the county and do it? Again, you get into that. I mean, they may think it's a good idea too, but it's getting someone to work with them to do it.
Looks to me as though at some point we need a county city caucus on these transportation issues.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that as a way of driving maybe some action from the transportation committee?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just schedule it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. We'll do that. Obviously, we can't do it now, but it's on my radar. It's on our radar, and we will carry it forward. Okay, great. I'm trying to get through these things. Bicycles, the legislation that we recommended that the state take up has been introduced in the House of Delegates by Dana Jones. So that's very nice. We don't have a sponsor in the Senate, but apparently there's a process by which the House of Delegates will hand it over to the Senate, and they will take it up, and I hope it will pass. So that's all I have on that. Now I'd like to move into new business legislation. 04021 is the capital budget item, which relates to the 100% electric mobility plan that Gavin just discussed. I just commend, have any of you read it? Do any of you have any ideas on it? Any positions that you think that the Transportation Board ought to take on it? All right, I don't hear anything for the moment.
For if we have not read it and want to read it and give comments to the board, by when do they due to make any effect on the legislation?
I don't know when their next meeting. The city tried to get this thing through very quickly through the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee's had qualms and put it off for a later meeting. And I think it would be nice if we were going to speak on the subject that we speak before the next Finance Committee meeting. And I'm not sure when that is, but it's probably within 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right, well, think about that, and let's talk about it further. 0922 is off-street parking requirements, and that is a proposal by Alderman Schandelmeyer to relax the requirements now embedded in code for off-street parking provided by businesses. In my ward, in Ward 2, there's strong sentiment that the parking requirements are unnecessarily burdensome for businesses. We have tons of parking, and so there's great support here. In other wards, that's not the case. And so the question is what we as a board would like to do, if anything, with respect to this proposal by Alderman Schandelmeyer, which is 0922.
Okay.
Yes, Beth?
Being a downtown city resident, and it would really be a burden, more than we have already, because we already have people that park on our streets and take up parking, that don't want to go into the garage or a garage and pay. And I think it just would signal that it's perfectly all right to park in the residential districts. And I think it's just, I don't think it's a good idea. I really don't. Or have it be in areas that have plenty of parking, such as West Annapolis or even Eastport or whatever, but keep it out of the historic district, because it's a real, we already have a problem and we don't need to add to that. And so I just think it's not, from my point of view, it's not a good idea. And again, what Gavin said about parking, there are parking lots that are open after 5 p.m. So if you did that around the city, could help relieve. There's not an awful lot of them in the historic district, but there are some here and there. And, and those could be maybe utilized, but not just coming into the residential district. It just becomes too much of an issue. And it's just not great. I shuddered when I read his thing, I mean, it's not good.
Well, parking is something that rouses passions. Yeah, I've pointed out that they cover the spectrum all the way from this is, I guess one extreme is this is a public resource and should be open to the public without limitation to everybody, end of story. And let the resource serve as many as it will. Another point of view is that residents deserve special access to that resource, even exclusive access under some circumstances. And then the, I guess another, there are lots of options. So
Well, when they want to start paying taxes to help just to park on the streets and, then fine. I mean, that's what we pay our taxes for. So we certainly should have first dibs and all that. So,
well,
and
that's
it's an old, this is
that's
an old.
debatable. We
I know,
don't.
but this,
We have lots of people driving on Annapolis streets who
I
contribute
know.
nothing to.
I know, but the parking, this is an old city and it just, it wasn't designed with a lot of parking and obviously it wasn't designed for cars. So you always have special circumstances in a small city like this one, an old city. So, but I don't think it's a great idea personally.
Well, let me put the question to those who are here. Do you think we should make any statement on this piece of legislation? Or would you like to remain silent?
I do. We are also, parking is also a big part of our, what we're supposed to be doing. So I would say yes.
All right. I anticipate some differences of opinion among us, but we'll,
Kurt, if I may?
yeah.
I partly agree with Beth. I think we aren't doing our jobs if we don't say something about this. I also think a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. I don't like one-size-fits-all requirements to provide parking, and I don't like one-size-fits-all efforts to reduce those requirements.
Mhm.
It's a very site and context specific kind of thing. Now, if we go down the road of saying in certain wards yes and other wards no, then we might be criticized for favoring restaurants in one ward over another. But I think that's defendable for reasons that Beth laid out. But the other opportunity maybe this presents is to say to this particular alderman, let's horse trade a little bit here. One of the things that would reduce the effect of pulling back on parking requirements is if we had more people on the circulator. And what have we been working on? A plan to reduce fares and not just the circulator, but in general, if our fare fee proposal, coupled with some of the mayor's initiatives to allow better utilization of parking that's may not be exactly where a given restaurant's located, but with improved mobility options like the little GEM vehicles, and improved information availability about what the parking options really are, then we could all kind of move in the right direction together.
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm thinking this up as I say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll ask you all how you would like to proceed. I frankly don't know how to start on this one, but if someone would like to take the bull by the horns and come up with a draft proposal for our advice to the city on this ordinance, that might be a way of starting. Is anyone so motivated?
When would it be, when would we need to do it? We'd send it around, email to everybody, because they're gonna be working on this by the time we have
Yeah,
our next meeting.
it's got to go through 3 readers. It's only made it through 1 so far, I believe.
Yeah,
And so we have time to do it.
I mean, I guess I don't mind. I've got to think about it. Maybe I'll ask John for some help.
Oh, you know me. Oh, you buy a beer, I'll help out.
Pardon?
Buy a beer, I'll help out.
Yeah,
I'm still struggling with this. Is regarding a requirement, a current existing requirement.
Current existing requirements are for a certain number of parking spaces per seat in a restaurant.
How are they realizing this today?
Well, they are either meeting the requirement, which is stated numerically in the ordinance, or
Yeah.
they are applying for waivers. Waivers have been applied for in the case of West Annapolis restaurants, and they have been granted.
So our downtown restaurants, just to pick the examples I know the best,
Mhm.
Cafe Normandy, to take an example, has no off-street parking.
but you have a garage.
So how does the garage fulfill their obligation to have off-street parking?
I don't know. I'm guessing their grandfather.
Or I thought. the
All right,
same
if I want to open a
John.
new restaurant, if I want to open Iron Rooster,
Okay,
how do I go about fulfilling this obligation before I ask for a waiver?
okay. I thought the same thing, John, and I mean, I don't know, but I said, well, there is off-street parking available, and that's the garage, and that's why I thought that they probably don't have too much of a problem. Now, maybe that doesn't work, and maybe they do have to ask for a waiver. I don't know, but I just assumed that this large parking garage and another one not so far away, in fact, 2 not so far away, covers it.
If the
So I don't know.
existence of a garage allows a restaurant to say, I don't need to meet this requirement, then I'm all for striking it down.
All
It is
for
a
what?
dumb rule. I'm all for striking it down because it's not really doing anything.
Yes, it is.
What's it doing? What is the restaurant doing as a function of setting this law? Nothing. They're saying, there's a garage over there. I don't have to do anything. I don't understand how this is. Now, I do understand about the waivers, and I would understand if the city, if the businesses in town have become used to just getting waivers granted upon first request. Maybe that's what's happening. In which case, we aren't enforcing a law on the books. And the question we should ask is should the law be struck down, which is what is happening here. I've said enough.
No,
That's-
you're right. No, you're not. No, you're right. If the law isn't being applied and it's waiver after waiver after waiver, why have the law?
Right.
And I agree with you. But like I said, I just assumed that the garage was the public, the open parking to which they, fit the bill.
Well, I think we should ask this. All right, Kurt, I'm in with Beth. Here we go again. Mamma mia, here we go again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in. We'll see if we can sort this out. But my first thing you should do, Beth, is ask the
Yes.
city for how many applications and how many waivers did you grant?
Yes.
Well, I'm happy to leave it to you unless others have other ideas on this point.
Sticky chocolate mess, help yourself.
Mhm.
Is there a
Okay.
cost involved with providing that parking?
Huge.
Yeah, huge.
If
So
they were
maybe they could,
expected
maybe they,
to do that, if the law was enforced, and let's take Iron Rooster as an example. Iron Rooster, which is a relatively new restaurant, was required to provide 1 parking space for 15% of the capacity of that restaurant. I'm guessing is 100 people,
right.
right? We're talking
Yeah.
about 15 spaces they would have to produce in the downtown district,
Or
which
an
is,
alternative, I guess valet parking would serve, right?
and we're parked them
Right.
at the Naval Academy Stadium
Yeah,
and run
I
the,
was just gonna say, they could, rather than paying to provide parking, they could opt in to put that money towards our transit system, thereby helping with the funds for
for fare
fare-free.
free. There you go.
There you go.
Good
There you go.
thinking.
Well
That's a
done.
good
I think we're
idea.
done now.
Done.
Kara has finished it for us. Beth and I are presenting our report here.
But I do think it is worth contemplating with the strides that the city is planning to make with mobility. Is there a conflicting interest here with upholding this requirement for restaurants to provide parking? So we want people to take transit into the middle of the city. We want to have this sort of untouched quarter mile of space where people aren't parking, yet we want to require restaurants to provide parking for their patrons.
So
there
I think it
just
gets
seems like a
broken into
disconnect.
two parts. Part one, and Kara, by the way, welcome to the subcommittee. Part one is what is the existing regulation and is it just in the current context? And part two is what is the future of that regulation in light of the Hillman Garage coming down, light of fare free, light of electric mobility, in light of all the other things that we're trying to enforce and make happen to make Annapolis the most vital and easily moved in city on the planet.
You
Yeah.
know, I don't know if you remember, and I'm trying to think, but Adam's Ribs wants to move from from Eastport Shopping Center to someplace on 4th Street. And one of their problems is parking. And I don't know if they've moved along, if they've resolved it or whatever, but they talked about renting a lot from somebody else nearby that didn't use it after 5. This business is about after 5. And the city didn't like that idea from them. And I mean, at the time, this was, you know, this was in the last year, probably maybe even as much as a year ago. I mean, things with the pandemic, it's hard to remember when anything was going on. But anyway, I don't know if anyone else remembers reading about that, but that's, so when I saw what this guy, city rep, council person wanted to this bill, I can't think of which group he's from, which area, but I thought of that and wondered if that wasn't part of what he was doing it for, was because the Adams Rib wasn't able to make the move, or at least I don't think it's moved yet. And it's all relating to this parking. And it's down, they want to move down on 4th Street somewhere, I thought. So anyway, I think that I've jotted down what Kara said. I've jotted down what John said. I've got my own notes, and John and
That's a good start. I will leave it to you.
Kara, can you join our little band and
I was
make it a
just thinking
threesome?
the same thing.
Yes.
Maybe.
We have to induce
Put me on
you?
the email
Is that
thread.
it? By the way, if you join the group, you got to bring 15 parking spaces.
We got a lot in Ward 7, so you know.
Hey, Kara, I got your name down. So we'll be conferring.
All right. Can we go on? This is our around the table thing. And Beth, you're first on the list.
Well, the only thing I've been doing, of course, is fare free, and you've given the status of fare free. We've talked about it forever and ever. And it was nice to know that we finally were able to make a kind of presentation to the mayor, and that he just knows about it and does agree with it. So it's nice to know but that's it. I mean, we're just waiting for either the city council to do something or for the city council transportation committee to do something, but somebody.
Yep. Okay, I have nothing. Tom Schuck? All right, Elvie is not here. Charles Brooks is not here. Kara?
Nothing right now.
All right. David DeQuincio?
Just wanted to clarify, in case you were wondering about what I was explaining to the mayor. So we just wrapped up a demonstration project with Watermark where they graciously allowed us to install equipment temporarily on one of their water taxis. And we have.
This is an outboard system?
Yes, and knowing full well that that equipment wouldn't be sufficient in a real life way, but it would at least give them a taste of what's possible, and it gave me data that's really important. So now I know where I can run numbers and figure out, okay, the two outboards that we had, each was 6 kilowatts, so 12 kilowatts total. It's not enough, but now we can figure out how not enough it is and what would be enough. So 3 customers graciously agreed in exchange for small purchase price discounts to let us use their equipment before we send it to them. Jake, the new owner there at Watermark, was very impressed with the performance of the equipment. The maneuverability is incredibly good. And so now comes the hard part where we have to figure out whether or not the new craft that they are designing, they have a naval architect working on a new generation water taxi, and now we have the fun job of figuring out if we can fit enough batteries on board to support the full day of operation that they would like. So it's pretty cool.
It is.
Pretty cool to be able to show these folks.
Yeah, you're at the locus of, you are where it's happening nowadays.
We saw this day coming, but we thought we would get to it in a more gradual way, and that we would be able to plan a little better in terms of resources and things. But the phone is just ringing all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was really impressed with these cruising boats that are all electric, that have regenerative propulsion systems. They're totally amazing.
So that's it for
okay.
me.
All right. No Carol, no Vince. John?
I should say nothing. I have made the executive decision to super glue my mute button on so that I don't wind up on any more subcommittees. Talking is bad, so I'm not going to do that anymore.
We'll entice you to do so. Okay, Tara's not here. Zoe's not here. I think that's it. I will, unless there is, oh, Kwaku, are you still here? Or has he left?
I think he left.
All right.
He
Don't
gives
see
up
him.
on us after a while.
Yeah, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All right, in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much for your participation. I'm going off to the Virgin